You can be what you wanna be. Be what you wanna be. You just be what you wanna be with me.
Hello, beautiful people. Sambowker here for another episode of Happy AF. I'm super excited you're here again to hang out with me and share what's been going on in the wide world of, well, let's be honest, at the moment it's kind of all about me, but I really do want it to be of service to you. So today I want to talk to you about something that I know not only me, but I know probably millions of people on the planet, if not billions of people on the planet, have a bit of shame and maybe a bit of embarrassment. And it's a bit of a triggering topic, okay? And I'm going to be as honest and as vulnerable as I can as I'm sharing this with you because this is something that I haven't really talked a lot about. And it's kind of a struggle that, you know, I've been fighting on and off to one degree for pretty much most of my life. And that is to medicate or not, okay? And some of you may know, right? And when I talk about medication, I want you to start asking yourself and I want you to start noticing the connotation before you even know what I'm talking about, right? When I say to medicate or not, okay, here is the question, right? If you knew somebody who had high blood pressure, would you judge them for taking blood pressure medication? Would you have an opinion about it? Would you look at them and think, oh my God, you're weak as piss, you're taking blood pressure medication, like, oh, who are you? Or what about if you knew someone that had an overactive or an underactive thyroid? Would you be a person that might maybe have a massive opinion about that? What about if someone had cancer? Would you go into a space of, oh my God, you're, taking all the medication for cancer. What a loser, right? And I don't know, maybe you would. Maybe you're one of these people that just believes everybody should be able to heal everything by themselves. And hey, listen, there's no right or wrong way for you to think about this, but what I want to share with you today is a bit of a battle that I've had, and also I guess I want to own up in my role in maybe how I've been contributing to the stigma and I guess the insights and awarenesses that I'm currently having at the moment as to perhaps why I've contributed to the stigma and what my experience has been. So what I want to share with you today is all about, I guess, my journey to discovery around ADD, attention deficit disorder. It's sometimes attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They are different. In most general terms, for those of you that don't know a lot about it, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is someone who struggles with keeping, attention to detail, but also massively, hyperactive and so forth. And then ADD is more focused just around a deficit within their attention, okay? And honestly, until I was 15, I had never heard of it. So for me to explain where I am now, okay, I need to take you back to the beginning so that you can get a bit of an understanding and some insight and awareness as to why I've got this challenge. And I know that I'm not speaking just for myself, okay? I work with thousands of people. Every year I have the pleasure of helping people overcome stuff that they have shame and anger and hurt and resentment and guilt and stuff that's, traumas that are keeping them stuck in patterns that are not serving them. So I really do believe that I'm qualified to speak about this, but I am just speaking about my personal journey. So please do not take any of what I'm saying, in lieu of what your doctor might say or your psychiatrist or psychologist. I'm none of those things. I'm just a mere mortal sharing with you my experience in hope that it may uncover if you have some challenges in this area, and B, might maybe just do a little bit to reduce the stigma for the millions of people that struggle with this, okay? So I was one of those kids, okay? If you ask my parents, I was one of those kids that never slept, right? I was that kid that, literally by the age of 2, my mother joked about the fact that they had a bottom drawer in the fridge that was for me because my dad was at university. He would go to uni all day and then he would come home at night and, it was the opposite way around. My mum would work all day, my dad would go to uni, and then they would do this thing where they would swap over. He would come back and at 11 o'clock she would go to bed and then he would play with me and then I would kind of go to sleep and wake up and go to sleep. I was this kid that just never ever slept, right? And my poor mother, I remember in the early stages, she took me to a doctor, and the doctor said, okay, so listen, don't let her eat oranges and only let her have, watered down pineapple juice and no preservatives. And, really just make sure that she only eats healthy food. And, 45 years ago, that was like a really, out there way of thinking. I mean, this doctor, if we look at it today, he was a trailblazer, right? Because, people weren't talking about stuff. Now today, when someone's a bit hyperactive and they say, don't eat preservatives and maybe don't give them so much sugar, we're like, yeah, duh, because now it's kind of a common known fact. But back then, it wasn't talked about, right? So anyway, from a very early age, I was on this very strict, low sugar, no preservatives, blah, 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 blah. And did it help? Potentially, okay? But then my parents, at about 2 years old, took me to a swimming lesson, right? So at 2, they threw me in the pool, I swam, and that day, when they brought me home from swimming, was the first day that I had slept for more than about 3 hours in a row. And my mother was beside herself. She was like, oh my God, that's it. And the next thing you know, they didn't have a lot of money. We lived in Wentworthville at the time in this little house. I'm pretty sure it was 25 Smith Street, at least that's my recollection. And it was this little brick home, or perhaps it was even fibro. Who can tell? In my brain, it was a little brick house, right, with a red roof. And anyway, they put us a pool in the backyard, right? Because my mother was like, man, this is amazing. If my kid's going to sleep for a few hours, we have to get a pool. So, of course, my dad accommodated and they put the pool in. That worked for about 6 weeks. So for the first 6 weeks, I went into the pool and I slept. And my mother was so excited. And then I got used to it again and I went back to sleeping for an hour at a time, right? And so from any recollection I have of a story of my parents talking about me as a child was, you never slept. You never slept. You were always busy. You always talked a lot. You were always, like, blah, 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 right? And as I kind of went through life, by about 7 or 8, okay, I remember my parents working in these 2 different places, my mum specifically working in these 2 different places, okay? And I, used to go to work with her, and I remember her bosses saying things to her like, oh my God, your kid, she never shuts up. She's so full on, she's so intense. And I don't know that they ever said it to me, but they said it within earshot of me for sure, right? And definitely then as I got a little bit older, I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and I used to wash the dishes at one of these places, and, the lady who owned the place used to say to me, gosh, like you just never shut up. And I realise now as an adult how as early on as 8 and 9 and 10, I started feeling like I was being made wrong for talking too much, right? I started feeling like, it wasn't normal, in quotes. It wasn't normal to talk so much, and that maybe there was something wrong with me. And I didn't know then, but now I definitely do know that started me on a bit of a journey of self-destruction, if I'm honest. I don't really know how else to frame that, but it definitely started me on this journey of I talk too much, I am too much, people can't handle me, I've got a strong personality, I'm very dominant, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, blah, blah, blah. You fill in the blank. And I wonder if you can go back and relate, or I wonder if you have a child right now that maybe matches the description that I'm sharing with you. So by the time I was about 13, I discovered drugs, okay? And the drugs I discovered were, at that time, it was just weed, right? I smoked pot, and I think I was much more grown up for my age at 13 than a typical 13-year-old, although today I have an 11-year-old and God, she's like seriously grown up, but whatever. I didn't look 13, I didn't act 13, and most people thought I was like 18 or 19, which is a pretty dangerous combination because you end up in environments where people offer you things like drugs and they think you're a lot older than you are, right? And I started smoking weed, right? I started smoking pot, and I noticed that it did something. It allowed me to slow myself down enough, like, to be able to sit quietly, right? And be able to sit in an environment with people and not be like, I could sit there and contemplate, and people seemed to like me more when I was like that. okay? Anyway, by the time I was 15, I had graduated and I had moved on to taking speed, copious amounts of speed. And the thing that I had discovered with speed was that it actually also allowed me to do two things. One, it allowed me to go into an environment and it was like it somehow slowed my brain down enough to be able to retain and pay attention to what people were talking about. And so what I'm talking about, like when people think about drugs, okay, and I know I started with to medicate or not, and I am absolutely talking about legal drugs, but this is where my journey started, okay? And so at 15, I started taking these drugs and there was two things that happened. All of a sudden, I noticed that the outside world seemed to like me more. I seemed to be more consumable. People seemed to tolerate me better. Even my parents and my sister and people that I'd never really been able to, not necessarily my parents, but very much so my younger sister, I was able to communicate and get on with her on a better level. I was able to walk into an environment and I was still able to be the light of the party, but I wasn't always interrupting everybody and I was able to kind of hold a conversation without constantly, needing to interrupt and get my point across. And if you're that kind of person, you'll know what I'm talking about. Like you've all got a friend, if it's not you, or if you've got a child, right, who sits there and they listen and they hear and you can see they're just waiting for a gap in the conversation because they want to speak, right? And because they've got so much going on in their head. And today we talk about that and we would call that ADD, okay? And we'd give it a label because, we love labeling things as humans because it makes us feel safe. We don't like stuff we don't understand. And so moving forward from kind of 15 to 17, I was a pretty typical kid, didn't like school, hated school, but I discovered drugs and I discovered this tribe of people where I kind of felt like I fit in. I found myself feeling like I belonged, okay? And when I belonged in this place, right, there was no one kind of judging me for who I was or how I showed up. It was just, I don't know, it kind of felt like all of a sudden I'd found my people. And I truly believe that the number one thing human beings want on this planet, well, actually there's two things. One, we want to know that we're enough. And two, we want to belong somewhere, right? We're tribe. We like having a tribe. We like being liked and loved and accepted. And so I'd felt very much so not liked and loved and accepted. I always felt like I was the outsider. I always felt like I was too much. I always felt like, like I said, I wasn't consumable. I wasn't for mass consumption. And so I always felt like I was the outsider, right? And then when I discovered speed and started taking all these drugs, I found that all of a sudden I felt like I fit in. And worse than that, there was parts of my life that seemed to get an awful lot easier, right? Now, it wasn't all, unicorns and rainbows. I had a massive breakdown at 17 years old. Most people would have gone to rehab. I went home. My parents looked after me. They were amazing. And I know today, looking back on that time, because we lived in a very small community, I have no doubt the stigma and the shaming and like the community where we lived, like I know it would have been horrific. And I feel really sad for my parents for what they went through because they're very private people and this was not private. I went down in flames and it was public and everybody knew about it and I was the daughter that came home after moving out at 15 and I was a drug addict and all of this and I know how much shame they had over this, right? But I remember at 17 going to the doctor because, of course, that's where my parents took me. And, the doctor said, okay, well, she's, a drug addict. But you know what? We actually think she has this thing called ADD. And it was the first time a doctor had really talked with my parents about this thing called ADD. And they said, look, we should really put her on medication. And I remember thinking at the time, fuck no, I'm not going to be medicated. You're just getting me off drugs. And now you're saying, don't take the illegal ones, take the legal ones. And so at the time I was like, no, I'm not doing that, right? And I look back now and I look back on that particular point in my life and I realised that I had so much desire to, I was so pissed in my life, okay, about being not fitting in and being told that, I was too much and all of this, that I started wearing that as a badge of honour. I started going, you know what? I don't need to fit into your little club. I'm all by myself. I'm my own unique, special kind of shiny as fuck, and I'm not going to fit in to what you want me to fit in. And so you want me to take your medication? I'm not taking your medication. Jam it, right? And so I shunned it. I didn't go down that path at that point, right? And I'm not going to go into a massive big rant between 17 and 32, but let me just say this. The simple fact is, between 17 and 32, my life was like this. I had massive highs and massive lows. I was on drugs, I was off drugs. I was on drugs, I was off drugs. And, you know, I now look at that and go, well, I was just self-medicating, right? I was medicating the fact that, there would be times when I'd be, you know what, it's okay, I'm shiny, I don't care, I don't fit. Oh my God, it's really uncomfortable, I want to fit, I just want to blend in. Oh, fuck it, I'm not going to fit. Oh, no, actually, maybe I really do want to fit. And I went on this it was like a dark night of the soul, this constant internal battle of, how can I be more consumable? How can I be liked and loved and accepted? How can I be a success? What does a success look like? Is the success, earning lots of money, having the house and the car? Oh my God, I get there. No, that doesn't make me feel happy. And so I went on this really big journey, okay? And at 32, I lost everything. Now, it coincided at the time with the global financial crisis. I was a real estate agent, and at that point, I'd taken into, I'd graduated by that stage. I'd moved on from speed, gotten rid of that crap, and then I'd moved myself onto ice. And anybody that knows anybody that has been down the journey of addiction knows that addiction, it doesn't matter what you are using as a numbing mechanism. If you don't deal with what is under that trauma, like under that addiction, you will just move the addiction. You will move it from drugs to sex to gambling to alcohol to porn. It doesn't matter. You will find a way of numbing, right? And so for me, this story is not about all of those drugs, right? But it is about medicating and self-medicating, and what does that actually look like? And the reason I wanted to share with you this today is that at 32, I decided, okay, maybe, everybody always tells me I'm so clever and I should be further along. And, and you said to me years ago, I've got ADD. And maybe that's the reason that I'm not as successful as I should be. Maybe that's the reason everything went sideways. Maybe that's the reason, it all fell apart. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I'm done trying to be, my own warrior. I'm done trying to, not be mainstream. I'm going to go be mainstream. I'm going to see a psychiatrist, and I'm going to just tell them my story. And if they think I should take medication, I'm going to take the medication. So that's what I did. I went to the psychiatrist, I sat down, filled out my form. He asked me a bunch of questions, and he pretty much looked at me and he goes, I don't even know how you're still here. He said, you are so high on the spectrum of ADD. He's like, if there's a spectrum, it's kind of like you pretty much rank with 99.9% of all of the, the KPIs, the key performance indicators of what someone with ADD looks like. Now, you have to understand, for someone like me, a recovering perfectionist, in this moment, I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'm the best. Of course I meet all those markers. Great. Awesome. Hook me up. Can you give me something? Is it going to fix it? What's the situation? Because in my head, I'm going, okay, well, if you're now saying that, yep, I've definitely got this thing that you're calling ADD, and you're now saying, here's this magic little pill, and if you take this magic little pill, all this stuff that you find really difficult, like your life administration and keeping organized and being on time and being consistent and finishing things. I mean, I've got 5% tattooed on my wrist because I start everything and I'll get 95% of the way through, and then I won't finish the last 5%. And I've made this story up about that and gone, oh my God, it's because I'm lazy. It's because I'm no good. It's because of blah, 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 blah. Maybe it's just because I've got ADD. So for me in that moment, it was like this magic bullet. I'm like, hook me up with the drugs, doctor. I want to take them. So I started taking them. And I don't know, clearly was not ready because I took these drugs for a little while, maybe 3 months. And anyone here who has ever thought that they've got ADD or does have ADD or ever struggles with finishing anything, like my patterns in the past, I managed to start and stop and start and stop and then never went back for the second appointment because it was all just too hard. And I probably made up some really good excuse at the time and decided not to do it. Anyway, fast forward to now. So that's back when I'm 32, okay? Fast forward to the middle of last year, right? And I turned 48 this year. So fast forward to when I'm like 47, right? Actually, hang on, whatever. The point is, it was the middle of last year. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing pretty well, right? I love my job. I love what I get to do. I'm very clear on my vision. I want to help people get happy. I'm doing a pretty good job at that. I want more. I want to help more people. What if I could just have that extra 5%? What if the reason that I am still not where I want to be in terms of helping as many people, in terms of being able to show up and serve as much, as being able to earn more money and buy my parents a house and build all these things and like all these grand plans, maybe now I'm ready to go and give this whole Ritalin or dexamphetamine, the legal version. Maybe I'm ready again. Maybe I'm ready to go back and get assessed. So I went back and I saw the psychiatrist again. And you have to understand, in the industry I work in, right, and I have got nothing against psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. There is a place for everybody, right? I'm passionate about anybody who does their job well. I don't care what industry you're in. But there is good and bad in every industry. And unfortunately, most people, because everyone has been to a doctor, everyone's had a bad experience at some point with a doctor. Because it's one of those things. It's like real estate agents. I used to be a real estate agent. Everybody's had a bad experience with a real estate agent. They're not all shit, people. But here's the thing. Everybody gets to experience them at some point. So there is a much higher likelihood statistically that you're going to have a bad experience. So they get a bad rap. Or a car salesman. Same thing, right? So anyway, I go back and I go to the doctor, and again, he says, yep, you know what, like, so why this time? And I'm like, well, all right, you know, the last time I came to see you, I was a mess. I'd just lost my business. I'd lost my house. I'd lost everything. I came to you as a broken person. This time, I'm coming to you as a successful businesswoman, a mother. I love my life. I have great friendships. I have a great business. I'm really happy. But I still feel like I feel like there's this piece that's missing, right? I feel like, you know, I just am not quite getting where I want to be. And I know I'm not lazy, right? I work so hard. I know I'm not lazy. I know I'm committed. I know I'm dedicated. Like, I get up at 4:20 half of the week, right, and train. I train 5 or 6 days a week, all things I don't like doing. So I know that I am not lazy. And I work really hard, right? I know that that's not it. But then I look at other people that have more perceived success than me, and by that, in my mind, success is they're just helping more people than me, right? It's as simple as that, because that's my measurement tool now. Am I the best mum, and am I helping the most people? As long as I can answer hell yes to those two things, then that's massive success, right? And in my heart, I know I'm not helping as many people as I want to help. I'm not helping the people that I have the capacity to help. So there's this frustration. And so I said to the doctor, I said, look, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm at a different point. Maybe it's worth trying, right? Because there's these things and, you know, I want to start them. And so he goes, yep, all right, no worries, let's give it another go. So he gives me the medication. And I've pretty much been on this journey since January, okay? It took a long time, it cost a lot of money. I had to go and see, because of my drug history, I had to go and get second opinions. And it was not a cheap process. And not only was it not cheap, it was painful, excruciating, long, drawn out. My ADD, if I want to use it, I mean, I joke about my ADD, right? My ADD brain was like, oh, for fuck's sake, are we still here? Are we still doing this? All right. But I finally saw it through and I started taking the medication. And it's been an interesting year. There have been massive highs and massive lows. And I don't know if you notice a pattern here with this, right? There is definitely some benefits to taking this medication, right? One of which I am, you know, proud to say that, I don't know, I'm up to episode 30 odd of this show. I made a commitment to myself to do this show, and I've done it consistently since the beginning of the year. This is something I've wanted to do a long time. This year I've made it happen. Was that the medication, or was it the fact that I was finally ready and committed? Again, I don't know. So I have this conflict. There's days where the medication feels amazing and I'm like, I feel like I'm on point and I feel like I'm on flow and my words work perfectly and I'm able to do my administration, things I've struggled with so much over the years. And then there's other days that I take it and I feel like it smashes me and I'm tired and I can't get through things and I feel like I dribble on and I make no sense whatsoever, right? And then I get this feeling that's too reminiscent for me of my days of addiction and drugs. And so I'm still in conflict. And so I started today by saying to medicate or not. And I have to say the jury is still out. But I want to share something with you today, right? Because for the last few months, I've not been consistent in taking the medication. What I have noticed is that when I know I'm going to film, I've been taking it because I've been so committed to making sure that I'm on point and I don't ramble and I speak and I show up. But I've noticed something creeping in lately, and so I've realised that I really need to have a look at this because I'm worried and concerned that the little bit of addict in me, and for me, when I talk about addiction, I think addiction has got such a negative connotation. So I want to share with you, when I say addiction, this is what I mean, right? You could be a gym addict and go to the gym all the time, and if you decide that's right for you, then is that a problem? Well, I don't know. Is it a problem? I think it depends on what you think. I choose to reframe the word addict now because I had someone in my clinic yesterday that was talking to me about being an addict. And I actually just think now I can reframe that to, well, whatever I do, I'm committed to doing it. Now, if that's the gym, if that's training, if that's, learning, if that's growing, if that's drugs, doesn't matter. I'm committed. I'm all in. So yes, I think there is a season for everything. And I'll fall head first into whatever it is I'm doing. If I want to know something about something, I am going to look everywhere. I'm going to dig under every rock. I'm going to ask. I'm going to make phone calls. I'm going to watch podcasts. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to read books. I'm obsessive about whatever it is that I do, right? And I don't actually see that as a problem. I look at that as a commitment situation. I like to know what I want to know when I want to know it, right? But I'm not on medication today. Because today, the battle that I've been fighting in my brain about this is I just want to check in. I want to check in now because even when I started taking this medication, I started it with the intention of I'd never wanted it to be long term because I still personally have got this stigma in my brain about needing a medication to be able to function like a normal human being. I mean, what is normal anyway? And what if it's not about functioning? Maybe maybe my expectations are unrealistic, and maybe it's not about, having unrealistic expectations. Maybe it's just about changing the way in which I do life. And I still don't know the answer to this question. But the reason I really, really wanted to share this with you guys today is that I know I'm not alone when I talk about this fear of being judged for being reliant upon a medication, right? I know because I speak to people every single day that come to me with massive anxiety and massive depression, and they don't want to take a medication. And I know that also when my clients come to me and they've been medicated for 20 years for depression and they come to me depressed, seriously depressed, and I have to ask, well, do you think the medication's working? Because you're here now paying me a mozza and you're here telling me you're depressed and you're on medication. And so what I really want to encourage you guys to start thinking about is that I don't believe this is black or white, right? I don't believe it's should you medicate, yes or no. I think that medication has a time and a place. And I think that sometimes the medication might be a good thing and sometimes it might not. And even for me with this particular medication, I'm going to continue on this journey and I'm going to share it with you. And up until now, I've kind of dipped and I've given people a little bit of information, but I wanted to bring it to you today because I realized how much shame I have about it. I have a lot of shame about the fact that, shame and embarrassment, that I should be able to work this shit out. I'm a mindset trainer, for fuck's sake, right? I'm an NLP practitioner. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm all about mastering this. Why can't I biohack this? Or is it the fact that I have biohacked it and maybe my little bit of addict is showing up? And when I talk about her, maybe she's that little part that's that perfectionist that I think I'm recovering from, maybe that's her rearing her ugly head and saying, actually, we're still here, sister. We just we've metamorphosed into something else. And so now we've got some doubt. We're throwing doubt at you. So I don't know the answer to this question, but I do know that I, in the past, don't go back and look at my podcast, and I don't go back and listen to my show and things like that, because then my inner critic, she has a field day, right? But I am going to start assessing myself, and I'm going to go back and forth, and I'd be really interested to see whether you guys can tell whether I'm medicated or not. Like, if you're following this journey with me, you know, I don't know, maybe in the comments section, if you think I'm medicated one day on a show, type in just M. And those of us that have watched this episode will know what you're talking about. And if you think I'm not, just put in a big capital N, right? And let's just see, right? And I'll share with you where I'm at, because I want you to start thinking about things like this. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It only matters how you feel. Don't let somebody else make you wrong for a decision that you're making. Because I got to tell you, it took me a long time to pluck up the courage again to go back to that doctor and say, hey, I want to give it a crack. And there's still that part of me that feels a bit, you know, I don't know, embarrassed about the fact that I have to do that. But I know that when you speak your shame, it dissipates. So I'm sharing this with you today because this conflict has been huge for me, and there's a real theme at the moment. I don't know if it is a universal theme, but there is a real theme for me to speak up and not allow my own boundaries with myself or with others to be crossed. And so this is kind of like this thing that keeps coming up. And so there's, you know, my fear when I come on here is that I go around in circles and I don't make a point, which is part of the reason why I've been so committed to staying on the medication, because I really want to make sure that I'm showing up and I'm being of service and I'm being of value. And I don't know, I guess we'll get to see whether this actually lands for you in the right way or not. I know that for me today on a lot of levels has been quite nerve-wracking, but I knew that I wanted to share this with you because this is a battle I know so many people are struggling with. And so maybe before you answer the question to medicate or not, ask yourself this: what is the impact of not medicating currently in your life? What is the impact you think you could have from medicating? Are you judging these two things based on your personal experience or someone else's opinion? Because just remember, there's a saying about opinions. Everyone's got one, and you know the reality is that you got to decide what's right for you. And Auntie Mary, who has never ever driven a car, is not the right person to ask what kind of car to buy. Yet there's a million Auntie Marys out there giving you advice on whether or not you should or should not medicate your kid, whether you should or should not medicate yourself, and they're making you wrong, and it's coming from a place of fear. So I want you guys to know you're not alone with this. There is millions of people on the planet that struggle with different types of things where they're questioning, should I medicate or not? And I honestly want to share with you that for the most part, whether ADD is a thing or whether it is just a story, it doesn't matter. For me, I truly believe that for most of my life, it's actually been a superpower. And I think it's what makes me as good at what it is that I do. But it's just that there's that part of me that wants that little bit more, right? So that's what this has been about, okay? That's where I've come, that's where I wanted to come here and show up today. And I have gone around and around in circles. I've spoken with a few of my friends about this, people that I really trust, about the battle that I still have and the fear, I guess, that underlies the story of addiction, because my opinions around addiction are potentially different than a lot of people that I really respect, right? For me, I really believe any addiction is about untreated trauma. It's about some root belief that you maybe need to have a bit of a look at. And I'm not this person that thinks, you know, you have to be sober and you have to go to AA, although I believe all of those things work for certain people, and I'm a huge fan of anything that helps anybody get where they want to go. But my belief around addiction has always been a little bit left of centre, and that is just that you don't need to numb if you love where you're at. And that means you need to look at all parts. And so on that note, I'm going to love you guys and leave you. I hope that's been of some value to you. And if you're struggling like with the answer to that question, you know, should I medicate or should I not? If you have a child right now who is struggling and you've constantly said, I'm never going to, oh no, I'm never putting them on medication. I just want you to know this. If I had a choice to go back as a child who was struggling, as much as I'm still battling with this concept around medication right now, I have to tell you, if I had a choice to go back as a kid who struggled in school, who's found it impossible to listen, who couldn't sit through a class, who felt stupid, dumb, didn't belong, found it incredibly hard to make social connections with people because I was always talking over everyone because I felt like I had to get my point across, otherwise I would forget it. If you have a kid like that, then I would recommend, right? I would recommend that you look at what options are available to you, okay? Because I'm not saying medication is the right path, but I do know that for my daughter, up until the 4th school that I changed her to, and she is now at a school that teaches her in a way where she is absolutely thriving, killing it, doing amazing. Not that we care about NAPLAN because, I'm not into these types of things, but she did just, measure off the Richter scale. And up until, a few years ago, no one had ever told me she was smart. I knew she was, but she certainly was not showing it academically. And now at 11 years old, she's thriving, she's athletic, she's loving life, she's having good social connections. And only a couple of years ago, I was like, shit, I might have to consider medication for her. So there is a million options, right? Don't let someone tell you what's right for your kid. Don't let someone tell you what's right for you. Go out there and do your research and ask yourself the question, what's the impact of not medicating, not getting support, not asking for help versus what have you got to lose if you go out and try? So I hope this has been helpful, and I know that for some of you that know me super well, this might surprise you, some of the stuff that I've shared in terms of going to see a psychiatrist. I told my daughter the other day that I had a psychiatrist. She nearly fell over. And then I started sharing with her, that this is where I was at with this Ritalin. And, the only reason I hadn't told her about it up till then was because I didn't want her to think that she needed it until I'd decided where I was at with it. And, as I said, the jury is still out. So anyway, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here at Happy AF, and I will see you next week. Have a great week.